Have you ever sat at home thinking something feels off, but I don't even know where to get help or what help looks like? Maybe you've heard about resources, but the idea of showing up feels overwhelming or honestly, kind of terrifying. Maybe part of you just keeps saying, it's fine. This is just part of their job. If you've ever felt alone, unsure, or stuck between knowing something isn't right and not knowing what to do next, this episode's for you. Today, we're talking about what support actually looks like and how you don't have to find it alone anymore. I am honored to welcome Steve Click to Code 44 podcast. Steve currently serves in first responder mental health wellness with the Ohio Department of Public Safety, where he supports the mental health and the wellness of law enforcement, dispatchers, and first responders across the state. But what makes him perfect for our episode today is Steve spent 36 years of his life with the Ohio State Patrol. To say he's got a little bit of inside perspective, well, that's an understatement. However, since 2018, he's been deeply focused on helping first responders process the cumulative trauma of the job. He's been a key part of programs like Ohio Assist and PCIS, helping officers and their families understand what the job does to the mind, body, and spirit, and how healing can actually begin. What makes Steve's perspective so powerful is that he doesn't just speak from trainings or theory. He speaks from live experience, long service, and a genuine passion for making sure first responders and their families don't carry this weight alone. Steve, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for the opportunity. I really do appreciate the chance to talk about what we're doing here and get a chance to be part of your podcast.
I think I first met you probably back somewhere around 2018, 2019, and you were doing a mental health training for Hancock County,
Yes, ma'am.
where my husband had served. And I have to say, I think you made an impression from that day because you talked a lot about small incidents
hmm
and how they pile up, as well as the big incidents. And that's where you described it as everyone's afraid of the bears, but you've got to beware of the ducks. And
Exactly.
so that has lived with me. I would love for you to share a little bit about your personal journey.
I'm the son of a state trooper, so I grew up around it. A lot of my family was in law enforcement. I had some family in the fire service. So it was just kind of something you grew up with. When I first came out of the training academy, I was assigned to the Delaware post, which is a very busy post just north of Columbus, and was involved in a number of different incidents. And we didn't think about them back then, whether it was a fatal traffic crash, whether it was pursued or whatever. It just was part of doing the job. But we've now realized that over the course of a career, whether it's 5, 10, 25, 30 years of doing this, the things that we dismiss when they happen, they don't leave. They stay with us and they begin to accumulate. And it's only later in our careers, unfortunately, that sometimes we realize that that crash from all those years before, that death notification you did, that resisting you were involved in, theirs are still with you. You think you left them behind, but you didn't. And all of a sudden you're finding you're reacting differently. And it's not about the situation you just dealt with. It was about the 14 others that were just like it. And this is number 15. And 15 was just the final thing for you.
And sometimes that number 15 is in the same week. I mean, you never can tell how many of
Absolutely.
those incidents are actually going to happen.
Absolutely. I mean, when I was early in my career, we had 2 fatals in one shift. We started off the shift with a 17-year-old boy that ran a stop sign, and later in the shift, we had an older woman run off the road and hit a tree. 2 fatals in a one 8-hour shift, and honestly, Amy, we just didn't think anything about it. We did the paperwork we needed to. We made our notifications, got the road back open, and then we came back to work the next day because that's just what we did. That was a part of our job, and I think all first responders have done that for so many years, and we never realized that. Not talking about it, we held things back from our families because we didn't want to traumatize our family. So we kept it all inside. We used a lot of unhealthy coping mechanisms. And I think that now the changes that I've seen in the last 10 years is just astronomical. The advances in the state of Ohio and nationally is just
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. You were describing the culture, right? The culture of what caused the stigma, which is you didn't think about it. You thought it was part of the job. You just shoved it back down and said, I got to put back on my gear and go right back out. And so all of those years is why we are where we are today. Tell me about how you then personally shifted your focus towards working on the prevention with families.
Well, I have to give a lot of credit to Colonel Paul Pride, who was the superintendent of the Highway Patrol back in 2016. I had the opportunity to come over to a newly formed section that was going to be bringing a program called Post Critical Incident Seminars to Ohio. I initially got trained in peer support, twice deployed to New York City after the World Trade attacks, but I really had very limited amount of opportunities to use those skills. And usually when we did, it was something really huge, something very dramatics. But once I had the opportunity to come over and do this full time, I got a chance to go out of state to see how they were doing things. And I started talking to folks around the state. And that's, of course, when I ran into to Sheriff Cortez was I was told this is a guy you need to contact up in the Hancock County area. So he was one of many that I was able to get in touch with. And we all talked about the fact that we knew where we were falling short. We just weren't sure how to fix it. We knew we wanted to do something more than the generation before us because they did the best they knew. They just didn't know. But now we know
Yeah,
better and now we're
right.
responsible. And I think in looking at my training background and combining that with the wellness as first responders, if we know ahead of times things are going to be a certain way, when they happen, we're like, oh, yeah, I knew that was going to happen. Give you an example. If you get shot and it hits your body armor will do its job. It will stop the round.
Mhm.
It is gonna hurt a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah.
If we know it's coming, we handle it so much better than if it catches us by surprise. That was like a light bulb for me. So as we go around the state and we can start talking to first responders that says, not if things go sideways,
Yeah,
when they go sideways. These are some
yeah.
of the things you might experience. So when they do it, I really hope they think, oh, somebody told me one time this might happen. I'm okay. I'm normal. I'm not weak. I'm not crazy. I'm not different. I'm like everybody else. And once they do that, they can process. If we can normalize those, we're going to handle it a whole lot better and we're going to be healthier.
And the culture shift of you're going to have bad trauma, you're going to see bad things. And if you talk about it, it's okay. I think that's a
Absolutely.
huge shift we have to make. It was always, I don't know if perceived is the right word or maybe coached that as a spouse, as a family member, just be quiet. Don't say anything, right? Because it might jeopardize their future. And so to see events and groups come out and say it's okay to start putting that vest on or that armor of emotions and figure out how to get back up.
Yeah.
So I love that analogy. That was very powerful.
As first responders, we didn't share when we went home because we wanted to protect the people at home
Yeah.
from the things we saw, we experienced, and stuff like that. What we
Yeah.
never realized, and one of the things we talk about now is the importance of what we didn't tell you folks, you made up. But we didn't give you the opportunity. Now, there's different versions. I say there's a couple of different kinds, and one is Disney. And Disney's like, I know bad things happen. Are you okay? That's bottom line. Are you okay? And then there's the one I'm married to, which I refer to as high def. What did it look like? What did it sound like? How many rounds were fired? The problem is for many first responders is we think we get to pick. We don't. Our families get to pick what they want to know. And we have to share that with them at the right time and in the right way. Our families are the biggest protection that we have in this world, but we think we're protecting them. They think they're protecting us. And then the reality is, we really just need to sit down and say, I had a bad call last night. This happened and it's still bothering me today, or I'm actually doing okay with it right now, but just wanted you
Yeah.
to know this is what we dealt with last night. So if I was a little short when I got home, if I tossed and turned last night, if I got up in the middle of the night, went in, sat on the couch, it wasn't about anything other than the fact that I dealt with this situation and I
Yeah.
appreciate you being there for me. I think if
Yeah.
we did that, I think that we could probably save some relationships.
Absolutely.
Lack of communication, it starts that wedge and then it just builds from there.
I know you'll be shocked at this, but I'm very much like your wife where I need all the details. Tell me everything. But I've learned that all the details come in his time after he's processed it, right?
Absolutely.
And so learning when to push and when to accept it. I've talked with a lot of spouses now through this podcast. And I think the one that really scares me the most on families is those of us that sometimes like to put ourselves in a little isolation bubble,
Very much.
pretend as if it's all okay. And, I find myself there sometimes too. When Mike was out on the road, I would think, oh, he's just going to the office and nothing bad's going to happen today. And when he would call and say, we had a fatality today, I was like, okay, that means you're going to be home late. And I would put myself in this little bubble and be like, when he comes home, he's going to be normal. And that was the farthest thing from reality. Right.
I think that one of the worst things our families can do is, it's all wonderful. It's far from it.
Yeah.
I was told at the very beginning of my career, what happens at home stays at home, what happens at work stays at work. What they forgot was me,
Yeah.
because what happened at home I brought to work,
Yeah.
and what happened at work I brought home.
Right.
And I've been very fortunate in having a wonderful support systems that I was able to go home and talk to. But I know not everybody has that. So then, if you don't necessarily have it there, you got to find it somewhere. A chaplain, a clinician, a coworker, somebody that shares your experience that you can talk to and say, "Hey, that was really messed up last night. That was a rough call. That's still kind of sticking with me and bother me. How are you doing
Yeah.
with it?" And to
Yeah.
normalize and to share that. If we're both having a problem with that call last night, I'm feeling more connected to that person, and I'm not feeling alone. I'm not feeling like I'm on an island.
Normalized. You said that word a couple times, and that's kind of been my motto for the podcast is normalize the conversation. So I love that you're using that terminology. We talked a little bit about this, but can you share maybe a little bit more about the work that you have been doing on mental health for first responders?
We do a number of different courses here at First Responder Wellness. We do a class called Crisis Awareness, where we talk about what are some of the physical, cognitive, spiritual, behavioral, what are some of the possible reactions that you might have. But one of the things we say from the very outset is it's not a checklist. You may see some, you may see all, you may see none. They may be at different levels and they don't come right away. What I tell people is no one's going to come into work the next day and say, "Hey guys, that call we were on yesterday, that really messed me up. I'm still struggling." We're not going to do it. It's not in our personality to do that. The other thing that we have to accept is I may not know what changes happen to me yet until I'm a little bit further down the road. So one of the things that our directors feels very passionately about is preventative, not always waiting for the bad thing and then try to fix it. Let's give them the resilience. Let's give them the protections and the training and the knowledge ahead of time instead of trying to come in and fix it after it goes bad. So that was one of the reasons for the crisis awareness course, was just to say, look, these are maybe some of the things you might see in yourself, and they're normal. One of the things the mental health folks always had me say was, you will have a normal reaction to an abnormal circumstance. Don't judge
Wow.
yourself based on your buddy. Don't judge yourself based on how you reacted the last time something like this happened. Give yourself the grace to say, right this minute, for whatever's going on in my world, I'm having my normal reaction to this particular situation. So we talk about why that's important physically, cognitively, emotionally, all those different things that we need to take care of ourselves.
So I'm going to shift our gears here just a little bit, and I want to talk about the stigma. I recently had a spouse that responded to a comment it was one of those Facebook groups,
Mhm.
right? And a Facebook group of about, I think it was 16,000, a pretty good sized one. And I said something about the stigma in it. And her response was, there's no stigma. And it made me really sad because I thought, gosh, in a group full of family and spouses, are there people out there that really don't believe that the stigma is there? So I'm going to ask you the question.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that we have made great progress in, but we've still got a ways to go. We know it exists. How do we combat that? We combat that with training. We can combat that with support, connection, education. Let's normalize your reactions. Let's give you the resources to help yourself and your family. But the
Yeah.
S word is there. I came on body armor. Guys kind of laughed at you if you wore your armor all day. The generation before me, they didn't wear their armor. They didn't think anything about wearing their armor. Now you look at law enforcement, there's not a police officer on the street today that would think about going on the road without their body armor.
Right.
So there was a stigma about wearing your armor at one time. There was a stigma about calling for backup. That's making its way into mental health as well, slowly.
Mhm.
But through the
Mhm.
work of all these agencies across the state of Ohio, agencies like Hancock County Sheriff's Office, the Ashland County Sheriff's Office, the Boardman Township Police Department, the Loveland Sims Fire Department in Cincinnati. These are just some of the partners I've worked with.
Mhm.
They're smashing through that. I think if we just start just moving right on past that into now, how can we help you? What
Yeah.
resources do you need? How can we help you? How can we help your family? But it is still there. It's going to be there for a while.
Yeah. I'm talking about the stigma of the old generation of don't talk about it, right? Just shove it down and don't talk about it because the fear was you would get your badge taken away from you or you would get your
Absolutely.
gun taken away from you. I still feel like there are law enforcement officers out there that are fearful of saying anything. And the fear is probably for many different reasons. But to your point, a lot of people, at least the ones that we know in the state of Ohio, are starting to break down those barriers
Yes,
and
ma'am.
say it's okay to talk about it. And Mike talks a lot about the preventive. You go to the doctor for preventive things, or you go to the dentist for preventive things. Mental health should be no different. There
I
is
agree.
preventative work that you can do. Is the progress real, or do you feel like it's still just scratching the surface at this point?
I truly believe we've made incredible strides in that area, not just even in public safety, in general public. I mean, if a friend of yours was to say, I was dealing with X and I went to see a clinician, you'd be like, did that help? Was that good? There was a time where it'd been, you went to see a shrink. As society starts to transition away from that being such a big deal, I think public safety will transition from it being such a big deal. The more we talk about those things, I think that we're gonna help this next generation. I believe this next generation of first responders are going to be mentally healthier than we were. When it gets to the point that when something happens and a clinician shows up at work and you take 10 minutes to talk to him, it's going to be like, no big deal. It's like putting gas in the
Yeah.
car or getting your
Right,
uniform ready. I
right.
think the more we make it what we expect, I think that folks are going to do much better. And I think each generation is going to continue to be healthier as we continue to move this forward. Then the people coming into public safety now, they don't want to look like us. They don't want to have the broken relationships. They don't want to have the mental issues. They expect different. And I think as agencies, we're working very hard to give them what they want.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. What do you feel, in your experience and what you've seen, still keep officers reluctant from asking for help?
I think sometimes it's a fear of being judged, a fear of what will my administration think of me? Am I jeopardizing a chance at a special assignment, promotion? Are they going to look at me differently? And the only way that fear gets removed is by administrations showing. Now you can say all day long, "Hey, come to us for help and we'll be there for you." But if you don't show it, you're not there for them. We are extremely cynical. Cops, firefighters, all of us, corrections, we're a very cynical group. We don't take anybody's word for it, unfortunately. You're going to have to show us. Agencies are going to have to show that they mean it. And it comes from the top down. There's several agencies in Ohio that one of the requirements is that you make a pass through the mental health clinician in the wellness unit. And you can go in and talk about what's going on in your life. You can talk about football. You can just sit there and stare at each other.
Yeah.
The superintendent, the chiefs, all these folks are going in and they're saying, look, this isn't a you go do it. It's we are going to do it.
We.
And when
Yeah.
we do it, I think that makes a huge difference. Agencies are going to have to show people they can be trusted. They need to help educate the middle and the younger generation to look, asking for help is okay. Once I start saying that I got help or that's normal, the fear of being judged, the fear of being
Yeah.
ostracized, I will tell you, Amy, in the time that I was on, the people I work with, what their opinion of me was probably one of the most important things in my life. Do they trust me? When they call for help and they hear I'm on the way, for just a fraction of a second, do they go, "Whew, I'm glad it's him."
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
extremely important to me, what my reputation was. And if I'm afraid that if I get help, people won't feel that way about me. I'm not going to ask for help. And I think that once we start working on that fear, I think officers and firefighters and medics will be more likely to step up.
Right. Which leads us right into you've been part of a program called PCIS by Ohio Assist. And I've talked quite a bit about these events on some of my other podcasts because truly it was life changing for Mike and I.
Mhm.
So, can you explain a little bit about what is Ohio Assist?
Certainly, it's a 3.5 day program. It's an opportunity for support persons and first responders, and we encourage them to bring a husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, coworker, family member, whoever they want. It gives them a chance to talk about the experiences that they were involved in. And, one of the things we tell them is we don't care how many rounds were fired. We don't care what apparatus was on scene. How is that event or events affecting you and your family now? And we encourage them to bring a support person because we know that they both lived through this experience or experiences. He or she's been just as much a part of it as the person who was in uniform. So we give them a chance. We offer them an opportunity to meet with a clinician. We offer them an opportunity to do relaxation yoga, which many people have never experienced. We talk about addiction. We talk about faith. We talk about resilience, why the importance of being resilient in this type of work. But what's important is they sit in a room with other people, and I tell them somebody is going to tell your story. And you're just going to be amazed because somebody on the other side of the room, sitting in this room, you're going to think, how did they know? And they thought the same thing when you told their story. And some of the most amazing and connection building happens during some of the breaks. You see folks talking in the hallway. They come in on Sunday night as complete strangers. And next thing you know, they're sharing stories and everything else like that. So it's to make sure that they know there is a connection, that they're not alone. And we're starting to see different programs pop up around the state of Ohio.
Yeah. Everything that you described was my experience, which is, you get in a room full of people and start sharing stories. And a lot of things happen there. I feel like you get an awareness,
Mhm.
not only that you're not alone, but you can no longer live in that bubble as a spouse or as a family member. And so bringing the families in is so important. I think I
Absolutely.
learned just as much, if not more, than Mike did during that time. And one of the reasons I really wanted to expose, PCIS, because I'm familiar with it, is I truly feel that spouses don't get the information of these things
I
being
agree.
available.
I agree.
Even in our own small town, I've said to a lot of the spouses, have you ever considered going? And they said, well, what is that?
Yeah.
And so, I think the exposure is something that we've got to work on. And whatever event that you choose to go to, it was life changing for Mike and I. We were introduced to EMDR, which I just did an episode on. That changed our life.
Hmm.
And we would have never had that experience, or at least probably not for a while, unless we had went to one of those events. One of the things that you just said has been a question that a lot of spouses ask, which is, how expensive is that? So I'm
I
going to let you answer it.
I can tell you that First Responders Bridge, Post Critical Incident Seminars, Frontline Freedom are free.
Yeah.
Some of the equine therapy have first responder days where there's no charge for first responders to come to that. I know cost is an issue. And one of the things when we first set up the assist program was Colonel Pride made it very clear that he was never going to have somebody say, well, I can't go because I can't afford it.
Right.
I never want an officer, a firefighter, a medic, anybody like that to say, I can't afford it and my agency either can't or won't pay for it
Yeah.
because we know dollars are limited and they're finite for things like that. So we want to make sure that that's not an impediment to them being able to come down and spend a couple of days and really get some amazing opportunities. You mentioned with the support persons that come. So often,
Hmm.
as they're hearing other first responders talk and other support persons, they're like, I'm getting a better understanding of why he or she has been the way they've been, has reacted the way they
Yes.
did.
Yeah.
And because again, we have that communication barrier between I'm not necessarily going to tell her what I'm experiencing, what I'm feeling, and stuff like that. Because even in our personal relationships, there's a stigma. I'm the protector. I don't want to let my wife down, or I don't want to let my girlfriend down, or I don't want to let my husband down. And I think as they hear other people in the room talk, it's giving them insight into that first responder. But when their spouse is sitting there looking at them and they're going, "Yeah, this bad thing happened, but I'm fine." And they're looking at them going, "You are not fine. You are all
Yeah,
those things they talked about." And I'm sure there's been some really interesting discussions back in their rooms after we've been all together during the day. But I think that that's the benefit from a bridge, from a
for sure.
PCIS, from those programs is not only you get a chance to tell your story, but we had a spouse one time say that no one ever asked me. They
Yeah,
focused on him. He was in the
yeah,
shooting. I went through the shooting as well. I lived with the
that's right.
aftermath as well. Not only do they get a chance to share their story, but they're hearing these other stories and they're going, okay, he's not crazy. He's not mean, or she's not trying to shut me out. She's dealing with this just like all those other folks are. We can
Yeah,
work through it. There's hope. I think that's the one big thing. We want folks to walk away from it going, I dealt with a bad thing or bad things,
yeah,
but there's hope. I can be
yeah.
happy, I can be healthy. My relationship can be better than it is right now, or maybe we're already good, we just get better.
I want to go back to one of the things that you said, which is you learn from everyone in the room. And that was my experience. And I shared this on one of my other podcasts where when we were at the PCIS conference, a dispatcher was talking about the guilt that she felt because she had dispatched someone that was later killed in the line of duty. And it prompted a conversation with Mike and I back in the room, like you said, the conversations that happened in the room after of me just asking the question, do you ever feel guilty of things that you couldn't be this superhero of or that you couldn't fix? And we started to have conversation because of course his answer was yes. But
Absolutely.
it opened up that line of communication that I'm confident that we probably would have never had. I just would not have known as a spouse that he was dealing with this. We see all of that being shoved down,
Mhm.
and then they're agitated or they're quiet or all the things. And so those conferences in my mind, like I really, if anyone walks away from this podcast today, I want them to hear that these truly are life changing in so
Very
many
much.
ways and in ways that you will never, ever, ever even think about. You'd mention about spouses or significant others or a support person coming with that first responders. It's funny because sometimes I'll hear a spouse say, yeah, I want my husband or my wife, who's that law enforcement officer, to go by themselves and get help. And I've often encouraged of, that's something you yourself should go as well. And I
Absolutely.
remember the conference that I was at, there were people there that had come alone, and I give them lots of credit for seeing that they needed to come, and they did come. But I do remember at the end, the one person that was sitting on my left said, I really wish my wife would have come or that I would have invited her. I don't think he even invited her. And so, if you're listening to this podcast, that would be my encouragement as a
I agree.
unit, as a family, go. And typically, I know ours was a 3-day retreat. You guys called it a retreat and tricked me. I thought I was going like to get massages and,
Yeah.
all the all this
It's all in
pampering,
the marketing.
but you call it a retreat. But I think that's really important because you're there together. There's no distractions. I remember in the evening, you guys had optional events. Like, do you want to come in and do you want to pray and have that quiet time? Do you want to do yoga? And at the time, I was like, I don't know. But we participated and it was amazing.
It
It
is
was
amazing.
healing. I think
Yeah.
that's really the word that I want to describe it as. It was healing.
They've had a number of people attend by themselves and say, "Look, can I come back with my spouse? Can I come back with my
Yes.
support person?" And they always say, "Absolutely." It builds that connection that we're in this together
Yeah.
because we both experience my career. We both experience the good days. We both experience my bad days because we're both in it. I think when he or she feels like they've been included with the first responder, it gives them a better understanding of maybe why I act the way I do and what I need and what I don't need because they don't feel excluded.
I think it's all about understanding
Very
too.
much.
unless the spouses are in a similar career. Most of us that are not in a traumatic filled career,
Mhm.
we're never going to understand what it is that you truly see on a daily basis. We're going to hear the word we had a fatality and just think of, okay, they're going to be home late from work. I think for me, this brought awareness.
Mhm.
And I think I walked away with a little bit of shame that I had to process because my brother was a law enforcement officer for 25 years, way before Mike and I. And on the way home from that event, I remember calling him and saying, I'm so sorry. I didn't know what you were experiencing. And I knew that he was a little reserved, a little quiet, didn't really talk a lot. You could see the dark, sunken eyes, right? But I didn't know what any of that meant. I don't know as a spouse or support person, unless you get into some type of a retreat or a program or some type of a support group where you're exposed to this. I don't know that we will ever fully understand what it is that we're seeing at home. Because even if they come home and give us the Disney version of what happened,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think that we have to give our families what they want, but it doesn't mean I have to get graphic. It doesn't mean I have to try to shock you. We're going to experience some things in our line of work that doesn't have to come home. But what we could say is, that really bothered me, helping recover that body, going to make that notification to a parent and sitting there with them for a little bit. They don't have to know everything about how the parent reacted. I don't have to have body camera footage to show them what that event was like for them to get an understanding of kind of what I'm dealing with and to be that support person. What they do was they want to understand kind of why do I react the way I do? Why do some days do I come home in a good mood and some days not so much? And how to help me on those days that I come home.
Yeah,
And
really.
I think that that's, like you said, getting that understanding. And then the big thing is finding out we're not the only couple that deals with these things. My husband or wife is not the only one that acts this way or has dealt with these. One of the things we talk about are relationships because we think it's so important. I think programs like these where the couples can go together
Yeah.
helps them to share that experience and it makes them feel more part of it instead of that's his world, and then this is our world. No,
Yeah.
it's all our world. And I think that's
Yeah.
extremely important.
And it's forcing the understanding. You have to understand it. How you process it is completely up to you, but you
Exactly.
definitely get a better understanding of what your spouse or family member is going through. What is the biggest benefit that you've witnessed from these events?
We saw a couple come into the program one time, and she had told him, I'm going to this program. I would like you to go with me. But if you don't be here when I get home. I'm sure that that's not the first conversation like that that's been had over the past several years of doing this. And when they came in, it was icy. There was no physical connection. They almost had their shoulders turned away from each other. That was the way they went through day one. Day two, they were not backs to each other anymore. They were at least kind of facing the same direction, and you could see conversations happening and stuff like that. Day three, they're holding hands. And when the seminar wrapped up, they asked if they could stay a couple more days. We watched them walk out the door of the hotel holding hands. So I think that it's situations like that that really help recharge you.
I got a little teary when you told that story because I don't think you were talking about that situation that happened when I was at your PCIS, but a very similar situation happened right in front of me. It was
Yeah,
like they came in as last resort, but they walked away seeing a whole new way of life and being able to process their way through it. So that
absolutely.
leads me into my next statement here, which is typically when people think of these type of events or retreats, it sometimes is that last resort. The symptoms are so bad or, we're on our way for to a divorce. this is not just for people in their final stages of trauma, right? This
No.
is for people of all stages, whether you're early into your career or early into your marriage. Like, this is not just for those who have been shot or in a critical incident. These type of events are for everybody all the time. Is that correct?
Absolutely. These are for the new officer that's in a new relationship that's fresh to the world. It is for the person that's got about 10 years on. They're kind of middle ground. They're not a rookie anymore, but they're not the old sultan yet. But, and then those folks that can see the finish line. Whatever that next chapter is, they want to go into that next chapter happy and healthy and all those other things. And I've seen so many people come through these programs that are dealing well, having good coping skills, good resiliency, walk out better because we can all of us can do better at different things. So you might be handling that situation well. You may have a great relationship with your spouse. Things may be good in your life, but you might pick up something and you might hear something. And you know what? Maybe when somebody sees that you're doing well, they'll come up and say, "Okay, how did you do this? What's the secret?" And you get a chance to have that conversation with a peer that says, "Hey, well, this is what we dealt with, and this is where it got us." So I think that any of the programs we offer are for the brand new all the way up to and including your retirees. I think as younger folks come into the occupation and they see that the agency, well, they're going to take care of me. They're not going to abandon me. They're going to make sure that I'm good all the way through. They're going to include my family in these things and they're going to make my family feel like they're a part of it. I think that's going to help retention. I think that's going to help folks come into the occupation, stay in the occupation.
Mhm. Yeah. And I'll say for Mike and I, we came into the PCIS program when everything was good. It was before we were married. So we weren't even spouses at that point. So I would encourage girlfriends, fiancés, and leading up to a potential marriage, things don't have to be bad for you to get into these. And I think it did provide a foundation and a base and an understanding for me to know
Mhm.
with eyes wide open what I was walking into when I said yes to his career, because that's basically as spouses, what we're
You're
saying
marrying a
is
career too.
that's right. We are in this with you. Absolutely.
My favorite couples, she's in law enforcement. He's in the fire service. They came because of an incident she was involved in. And he thought,
Mm,
well, I'm just coming along to sit beside her and hold her hand and give her a Kleenex. And then he realized he had a story to tell too. And now they're both peers and they're both amazing,
yeah.
amazing peers. But again, he didn't quite understand because he came from a different world. He came from the fire service world.
I could go on and on and on about the impact of one of these, but I think there's so many lessons to be learned and so much opportunity. And going back to one of the things that we said at the beginning is the word normalize. Maybe we've overused it today, but it truly is talking about things, exposing things, not allowing them to get, legs of their own where they become a huge impact. We talked a little bit about symptoms, and I would love your perspective. Again, we're talking mostly to spouses here.
Uh-huh.
How do we know the difference between just a bad day or accumulating trauma in our loved one?
One of the things we talk about in a technique is just that exact word, bad day. So I come in the door and whoever's at home wants to meet me at the door and tell me what's going on and everything else like that. Bad day. Means let me in the house, let me take my uniform off, let me sit in my chair for a few minutes and decompress. But there's rules. Before we call it a day, before we go to bed, I have to explain why today was a bad day. And I just think that's a method to open up that line of communication. A couple of months ago, the Department of Public Safety brought in a guest speaker. He's a former police officer from Australia. But one of the stories that's really stuck with me is he has a young daughter, and I think she's about 8 or 9. And she came to her dad one day and she says, "Daddy, are you mad at us?" He goes, "No, sweetheart, absolutely not. I'm not mad at you. Daddy, you always seem mad. When you come home from work, you're always mad. You're always angry." And he goes, "Honey, it's not about you." And she's trying to comprehend. He goes, "From now on, if I come in the door and I'm in a bad mood, you have permission to ask me what I'm mad about. And if I'm
Mhm.
mad at you, I'll let you know." She goes,
Mhm.
"Okay." So I guess a week or so went by and he must be in a bad mood. She goes, Daddy, are you mad at us? He goes, no, sweetheart, not mad at you. And she just went right back to being her.
That was it. Yeah.
Our families assume it's them.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
99% of the time, it's not. For those support persons who are listening, sometimes we need to be called out. We don't know we're being short-tempered. We don't know we're not being friendly. We don't know we've got that look on our face that scares our children. So I think that, learning to have that line of communication and understand what we're bringing home, we have to do a better job of, decompressing. I talk about sit in your car for a couple of minutes right before you come in the house. 3 deep breaths, change your blood chemistry. Ask yourself for just a second, what am I thankful for?
Common language is what I heard you say. And I know that that's something that Mike and I really work hard on. We've got a code word that when it's a traumatic day or a really bad day, that he's got to take time, decompress, but then eventually talk about it.
Absolutely.
And the bad days then become identifiable. And then hopefully because of that, there's less of that buildup of the trauma, but at least we as spouses will know the difference between, is this buildup that is now exposing itself, or is this just a really bad day? But if you've got that common language, that'll help you identify that. So thank you. That was very helpful. I'm going to ask you a question because I think the most common thing 99% of the time when I talk to a spouse of a first responder, they'll say, my spouse is fine. They say they're fine. Have you ever said in your years of experience of the state patrol, have you ever said you were fine when you really
Yeah.
weren't?
And absolutely. It was a lie. It was a huge lie. FINE is not a word. FINE is an acronym, and it stands for effed up, irrational, neurotic, and emotional. And I
Wow.
jokingly say, gentlemen, if you go home this afternoon and you ask your wife or girlfriend, is everything okay? And she says it's fine, is it? Fine is not good. I don't want a fine meal. I don't want a fine car. I want a good car. I want a good meal. I want good things.
Yeah.
Think about when you walk in the door in the morning and you see a coworker. Hey, how you doing? Good. How are you? And we just walk on by at one another.
Yeah. Don't even mean anything. Yep.
What if that person says, actually, I'm glad you asked because I'm going through a really rough time in my life right now. And you're like, oh, why didn't I come in a different door? Not because you don't care, but because that's just not what we're comfortable with. So yeah, there's a million times I told coworkers, told sergeants, told significant others in my life, told my family, told my folks, yeah, I'm fine, and I wasn't.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to hide that, and I'm also trying to convince myself that I'm fine. So therefore, I don't need help because if I talk
Yeah.
myself into it, then I don't
Yeah.
need to talk to anybody. So I think we kind of
Yeah.
need to take that word out of the English language and be a little bit more honest with one another. It's not
Yeah.
easy to be our families. The
Yeah.
phone calls, the calls we're on, the late dinners, missed anniversaries, the missed events, all those things the holidays we have to work, all of those.
Right. Right.
It is not easy to be our
Yeah.
families. We ask a lot. We owe them
Yeah.
a lot.
Absolutely. So, for families outside of Ohio, we talked about programs that are available within the state of Ohio. And I'm going to link as many of those that I can in the description of this podcast. So, for anyone that wants additional information about them, you should be able to find some links there. But there are a lot of families outside of Ohio listening today. What should they search for or ask locally for them to find a support program that's similar to the ones we mentioned in Ohio?
God love the internet because it gives them a lot of opportunities to look. Look for first responder peer support in your area. You might contact, if you have a mental health recovery board, an addiction mental health board, they might be a good place to start. Contact the public safety agency. I know post-critical incident seminars are in 13 states now. Those are resources they can look for. I think that the folks around the state have just done absolutely amazing work in the state of Ohio. There's a lot of amazing work going on a lot of other places as well. A lot of states are taking first responder wellness seriously, and they have amazing resources in their communities. So if someone needs help, they'll have my contact information. I'll try to find somebody in one of those states. Reach out to your agencies, do a little bit of internet research, and because they're all over the country. Some really great programs are happening all over the country.
Absolutely. There's a lot of things I took away from today, but three that I just want to recap, which is help does exist. And
Yes.
us as family members and spouses, we might not have that readily available at our fingertips, or maybe we're not getting constant communication about them, but they are out there.
Mhm.
Ask, get the help that you need. It does exist. And as you all heard Steve say, there's programs out there that are free. And
Mhm.
so don't let cost prohibit you for getting the help that you and
Absolutely.
your spouse, your family member need. The other thing is, as families, we're not betraying our loved ones by seeking support of these types of groups. You yourself, as a family or as a loved one, get into a group of fellow family members
Mhm.
and
Absolutely.
walk alongside of them. That's not a betrayal. And sometimes I'll hear spouses say, my husband or my wife does not want me to be in groups with other people because they don't want me to hear all the stuff we experience. I'm going to squash that right now. That's not a
Absolutely.
thing. You've got to get the help, and you're not betraying your loved one by doing that for you and or for your marriage.
For them.
And for them, yeah. And the third one is preventive does matter.
Very
Don't
much.
wait until you are at the final stages. We have had 6 law enforcement suicide in the last 7 years in our tiny little community and its surrounding. That is too many.
Much.
And so the more we can get loud and we can make preventive normal, as you said, Steve, going to a counselor now is normal.
Yeah.
Everybody does it. We all need to talk about things. So that is part of the stigma of telling us to be quiet. And I've said it on another podcast. I'm going to say it again. I'm giving you permission to be loud as
Absolutely.
a spouse and as a loved one, that we're not going to stay quiet and we're going to get the help that our loved ones need. So,
Absolutely.
thank you so much, Steve, for joining me today. There was so much great information, and I'm just so appreciative of you taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you, Amy, for allowing me to be part of this. Thank you for what you're doing for the families and for the first responders themselves. I think podcasts like this, which provide that information that they may or may not have had. And the biggest thing is just what you just said a second ago, that encouragement. You have a right to be happy. You have a right to be in a good relationship. You have a right to have a calm and peaceful home. Make sure you do that. And it's not a betrayal. It's, in fact, if anything, if we're honest, we're going to admit the fact that I'm glad you did.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it.
I'm so glad you joined me on another episode of Code 44 podcast. If this episode spoke to you, I ask that you share it with another first responder spouse so that they too can hear of the resources that are available for all of us family and spouses of law enforcement. Let me end with a prayer. Lord, for the ones listening who feel scared, unsure, or alone, meet them right where they are. Give them peace instead of fear, clarity instead of confusion, and courage to take just one next step. Remind them that they are not weak for needing support and they are not alone in this journey. Amen. Subscribe to Code 44 podcast on any of the podcast platforms, because I want everyone to know you are not alone and neither are they. Thank you for joining us.